So I wanted to do this video on a request that I had come in from someone from my last video, and they asked me to try and explain how they can let go of the guilt that they're feeling about wanting to come out of the matrix and leave their friends and family behind and that kind of stuff. There is no hard and fast rules to understanding anything that I'm going to say, and you don't have to be of a certain mindset or a certain person to understand these things. And what I mean by that is, I think sometimes we can fall into this trap of thinking that people that have a certain mindset or are capable of thinking things, i.e. why we would come away from the guilt. So that thought there is why some people can stop themselves from feeling that guilt. That doesn't take a special person. That's available to everyone. But sometimes I think as a society or as individuals, we can look at certain people that are capable of doing that like they hold some special tool, like they are some just special being. Whereas in effect, we are all just one species, as we know. We're all connected. So therefore, we all, to a little degree, one or the other, we're all capable of doing the same things. But if I want to try and keep this in a nutshell, and bear in mind, guys, I probably will digress off a little bit here and there, as I just did do. But we know that. I think what happens to us as we're in the dark night of the soul and things are shedding away from us, so our ego's going and we're going into this place of more clarity. And when we're approaching the place of clarity, that is actually what is making us feel guilty, because we're leaving behind all of our familiarity and our friends, family, and maybe people that we love, or bad environments. And we feel guilty because we're moving away from that and we're going to be fulfilling things for us. The trouble is with the feeling guilt and where it stems from is at that moment, whilst you're in the dark night of the soul where you are now, you are still attached to your ego, although you might not feel it. You're being separated, so don't forget that. And the part of you that's still attached, or your ego is trying to stay very relevant in you because it doesn't want you to leave the familiarity of the matrix. So it's doing whatever it can do at the moment to keep you where you are. It's trying to validate itself within you. And the way you can kind of identify that with yourself is by, for starters, you have to be alone. You have to be quiet. You have to let these thoughts come up. It's how you can hear yourself properly is when you're in silence. You can hear your inner voices, and with enough time, you start to learn what those inner voices truly are. But for now, to give you something to ponder on, the you that's still attached to your ego, so you are still listening to the story you are telling yourself. In other words, let me try and explain that a little bit better. The you that is now is still attached slightly to your old ego. Your old ego was telling you a story your whole life about who you are, the person you are, what you've done, where you should go, all the conditioning, guys. We know that. That's what your ego has always been telling you. The you that is now separating from that is still feeling parts of those egos. So therefore, you now are listening to the story that your ego has always told you about you. And that's where you need to come away from that. I'm trying to think if I've got any little stories that I could relate to with myself to try and make that maybe a bit better sounding or a bit clearer to understand. Because it's not as easy as, oh yeah, the person in the past, oh, I've moved on from that. Yeah, I shouldn't be feeling guilt anymore. It's not as easy as that. I think even Jesus said as he was being put onto the cross, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Now, please don't quote me on that, guys. I'm not a religious guy, but that's something that kind of come into my head. So I could be wrong there. Maybe it was for something else, but I'm pretty sure it was whilst he was being nailed to the cross that he said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So what we're talking about here is the other person's unconsciousness. But you have to remember, you was that other person. You was the other person that is inside the you that is there now. So you was unconscious to whatever it was that you were doing back at that point that's now made you feel guilty. And the whole reason you would feel guilt in the first place is because that's something that would have been manufactured into us from birth or beforehand, because of all the conditioning that goes on in society. So the person that you now currently are, the one who's in the dark night of the soul, that person there has got no rhyme nor reason to feel guilty for wanting to live life as life should be lived. The guilt that you're feeling is coming from your old egoic self that once listened to all the conditioning that was going on, and you are still evaluating yourself from that person. But does that make sense? I'm sure that made sense. But it's one, I'm going to do a t-shirt with actually, that says, does that make sense? It seems to be my favourite line. But I'm hoping that can give you some kind of, I was going to say respite, but respite is the wrong word, because respite itself actually means that kind of you're getting a break from something. So therefore you would deserve a break from something. There is no, you need a break from something. It is just as it is. It's just the fact that you are not that person anymore. That person was conditioned, was programmed to live by the rule book, to live by everyone else's standards, to not ask questions, to not be themselves. You have to really remember that started from birth. So it was completely unconditioned into us, and completely conditioned into us. And along with that conditioning, it's not just the physical things that go on with conditioning that make us go to work or do silly jobs that we don't really want to do through lack of self-belief, etc. It's the thoughts, it's the feelings, and it's the emotions that also get created along that whole conditioning process. The real you is the one that when you were born had nothing downloaded into your head. But we can't remember that. Some can, but 99.9% of us can't remember what we felt as a little baby. Of course we can't. But that's the last time most of us would have been really real, is there. And I wonder sometimes, and this is me going off in a tangent, I wonder sometimes what would actually happen if, let's say for example, we was left in the middle of a woods as a little baby with nothing or no one around us to guide us or actually bring us up or to put input in us. But let's pretend, for hypothetical reasons, I think that was the right word, that you could survive in that environment. That was kind of how, as humans, we survived. I wonder how we would be if we had no input into us. And I know we wouldn't be able to speak and this, that and the other. I'm kind of talking about in terms of, I wonder how our emotions would be, how our feelings would come up within us if they had never been tampered with in the beginning. Because that's how you have to look at some of the guilt that you're feeling, is your whole mindset, your whole aspect of life, your whole outlook was one of other people's aspects of life, and they've installed that into you. So you now wanting to do something different from what everyone else is deemed to be doing is making you feel guilt. But you have to remember, the guilt is also manufactured from the people that installed it into you, and who had it installed into them, and who had it installed into them, as to how the world should be lived. And anything less than living the world like that is wrong, is naughty, is selfish. I think it's too easy sometimes for us to try and look at, I'm really trying to think of an analogy that I can give you guys, or maybe I've explained it well. I might upload this video and see what you guys say, and if you need me to explain it again, then let me know. Because there's always, guys, there's that part of me back there. No matter what you're telling me, it's still coming through that I'm like, have I delivered that? That is, like I say, that's my old conditioned self with the dyslexia and stuff like that kind of comes into these videos. But try not to look at yourself now as though you was that person. In my past, I've done some things that I'm not happy about. I've done some things. We all have stuff in our closet, basically. We all have a past. We've all done things. And most of us have done things that we're not happy with, or we're ashamed about, or we feel shame of, or regret. Maybe we've hurt people. Maybe we've robbed stores, robbed a bank, whatever it might be. However you got to that point, wherever it was in life that you was at that point where you done that thing that made you feel guilty, you have to remember you was serving an ego. You are literally serving an ego, and the ego that was in you then is unconscious to the person that you are now, or you was unconscious to the person that you was now. If your ego had suddenly piped up back in the day and said to you, hey, don't do that, because in a few years from now, the real you's going to come through, and then the real you would never do what it is that you're about to do. You would probably stand there and go, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that then. And you carry on living your life. So what I was going to say is, the guy that I was, there's some things there that I don't like about me. There's things that I don't like about me, but I cannot even recognize that guy from before. I can't. He's unidentifiable to me now, because the guy that sat in front of this camera doing this video is the one that's who I am, and I'm still discovering who I am. So I'm still going to make allowances for myself if I get angry about something. I don't know, if I drop my keys and and it drops on my toe and I scream and shout, I'm going to very quickly laugh at myself, because there's the old ego kicking in, and how dare the keys land on my toe? So it's a crazy example, but hey. But that's one day. Or no, actually, I was going to say one day maybe all that'll go. I don't think that does ever go in any of us. I think it's perfectly normal and perfectly acceptable as human beings now to sometimes feel anger at the stupidest things, or to feel guilt, or to feel hurt, or to feel shame and embarrassment, to feel shit, to feel down. They're all just normal parts of being human, but because of everything that was ever implanted in us, we look at ourselves so differently from how maybe we should, because we look at ourselves through this magnifying lens of ego and societal beliefs and generational beliefs, traditions and stuff. That all that does is serve to keep us back. Or all it actually does, it doesn't just serve to keep you back, it serves the matrix. It serves exactly where people want you to be, so that you could be controlled. So that you don't get out of your pram, you don't get out of your lane. When you have a dark night of the soul and you start getting through that and you come out the other side, guess what? You start creating your own lane. I like that one. But I think, guys, I'm hoping that helped some of you lot who are really stuck in that throes of feeling guilty to move on, because that guilt that you're feeling is ultimately keeping you stuck where you are. And the only way you're truly going to give back to humanity and to our species and to the planet and the universe and to yourself is by moving on from that guilt. And once you understand that guilt come via stuff that was implanted in you, so your thoughts of being selfish, etc., or sometimes actions, but your thoughts of being selfish and that for wanting to move on was all implanted into you as part of the ego that made you up. Parents often say to us when we're kids, oh, you must share and this, that. We've got all of these rules going on us. Millions of those examples. But sometimes when you was a child, do you remember you didn't want to share? There's the shadow side. You didn't want to share, but you were made to, because if you didn't share, you were selfish. Or you was even punished at times by saying, you're going to bed tonight without any dinner, or whatever it might be, guys. But do you see how that implanted the guilt in you at those moments? The guilt of not carrying out life in the way that you was told. You're in the dark night of the soul. You're breaking away from that. Embrace that. You've been blessed with something that's come to you, and although it's agony and it's hell and it's miserable down there, it's a blessing, because now you have a chance to truly embrace the true you and move forward and get your message out to the people that are stuck behind. Whether they listen or not, unfortunately, most don't, because most can't think outside of the egoic matrix, if you like. They can't think outside that. And something somewhere in their life has got to give before they then start thinking, something's not right here. At that moment, the more of us that have come out the other side, the more of us can look back into the matrix and pull our fucking friends out of there. The whole system is built on lies that keeps us in. It's tragic. There's some wonderful human beings caught in there who have got a lot to offer, and they're not seeing it, and they're just breaking their backs, going to work, trying to make themselves feel good at the expense of looking good to everyone else. It's bloody heartbreaking when you think about it. But I think I've covered everything there, guys. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. But let me know if you want me to do more on that kind of stuff. And always, guys, I know you all do anyway. But yeah, let me know I'm not rambling on, and that kind of made sense, because then I know I'm kind of doing it right still. That's not me fishing for compliments. Oh, they see the ego come in there, worrying that you guys are thinking that I'm fishing for compliments. So the ego felt the need to say, I'm not fishing for compliments there. The ego is it's so sneaky. But after a while, you become so conscious of it. Do you see how quickly I picked up on my own ego? That's how quick it can happen. After a while, it's bam. Oh, I see you working. I see what you're doing. Stop that, you little sneaky sod. Let's get back there. But guys, thank you so much for all the comments. I truly mean this. I know I say it every time, but I truly mean this. You have ultimately created this wonderful community that I wanted. And we're sitting just at 500 subscribers, or just shy of 500 subscribers now. Oh, and guys, I just want to point out that this whole video and everything I've been speaking about is specifically directed more at the people who are struggling of coming out of the matrix, if you like, and leaving behind family members, or the guilt that they're feeling of wanting to move on and explore their own life. So this whole video was pretty much directed at that type of guilt. Nothing else to say, guys, apart from it's been a very cold day here today, so let's hope tomorrow is a lot warmer and I can get out and catch some nice vitamin D and stuff like that. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for all your wonderful comments. Hello to all the new subscribers, and yeah, I hope you're enjoying this content. You tell me you are, so I can take your words for it. Anyway, guys, I'm going before I say anything else stupid. Take care.